Hello and welcome to Shannon Gardens. Thank you guys so much for joining me. So in this week's video, I'm focusing on my front walkway area. I'll actually be pulling out the zinnias that are still blooming a bit there, but I need to go ahead and get those out so that I can get the pansies and violas planted before the cold weather rolls in. So I'll be doing that as well as planting a couple of different bulbs along with the pansies and violas in that area. So I'll show you guys what I'm planting and how I'm planting it, and then show you the end result. All right, you guys, so with that, let's get to it. So here are the zinnias that are still blooming. You do see there are pockets where they've kind of died back, but there's a lot that are still blooming, and I always hate to pull these up, but I need to go ahead and get them up so that I can get those pansies and violas established before the colder weather comes in. So I'll go ahead and get these pulled up and then get started on planting everything as well as my bulbs. Before I begin, I'm clearing away the existing mulch and any weeds that are left over or grass that may have grown in the bed with my summer plants. I try to get everything together and out before I start planting, especially when I'm in a bit of a time crunch like I am today, just to make sure everything goes a bit more smoothly while I'm planting. You'll notice too that I'm going through here again, just making sure that there aren't any leftover plant roots or weeds that I need to pull out, and also kind of tilling up the soil a bit before I start planting. All right, so I've got my zinnias pulled up here and I've moved the mulch away, so I am ready to plant. Now, I don't need to use any new gardening soil or anything like that. This is very well worked, rich soil. So all I'm going to do is add a slow release fertilizer before adding my pansies in, and then I'll just plant my pansies and violas, and I'm going to put my bulbs here in the background. So I think I'll start actually with my bulbs. Now with my bulbs, I'm going to be using a bulb fertilizer, which this is the type I have here. There are lots of different types. I'm going to use this type for my bulbs. And I'm planting both daffodils, which I've got right here, as well as a few tulips. Not a whole lot, but I've got the purple to offset with the purple pansies and violas that I'm planting. And then I've got these beautiful daffodils. Now I already have some existing daffodils that I've planted in this area. So this will just be balancing out some plantings that I already have. And I'll show you guys those other daffodils, a picture of them here. I'll insert it here so you guys can see how those look in the springtime. I've just got it on the other side of this bed. So this is again just going to help balance out those daffodils. Now, as far as the tulips go, usually I plant those in containers. I have not planted them in ground. So this is the first time I'll be planting in ground. But I'm just going to go by the directions here on the back, and it tells you the depth that you should plant to. And I'm just going to follow the guidelines for both the tulips and the daffodils as far as the planting depth, and then using that bulb fertilizer as well. And it should be pretty easy. Like I said, this is very well worked soil, so it shouldn't really be that difficult to plant in as compared to our normal Georgia red clay that hasn't been well worked. Now I am in zone 7B 8A in Georgia, so we are still well within the time of being able to plant bulbs in our area. So I'm going to get to work on these, and then I'll move on to the pansies and the violas. Now, one thing I did want to mention when you're planting your bulbs is that you want to plant with your pointy side up, and then the root side here facing down. So that's going to go down, and you're going to plant this side pointing up toward the top of your soil. Here I'm digging a bit of a trench for my bulbs using a garden spade that has a depth measure that helps in making sure that I'm planting my bulbs to the appropriate depth. I've really found this tool to be extremely helpful when I'm planting my bulbs, because I have a bit of a hard time sometimes calculating by just looking to see how deep I've gone. Now I'm going to be planting my bulbs in containers in my next video, so you guys make sure to stay tuned for that one as well, as my method will be a bit different for those bulbs as compared to planting these in ground. So after I've dug my trench out, I'm just placing my bulbs in the ground and then covering them back with the soil that I've mixed with bulb fertilizer. And just as another note, these bulbs are planted in almost full sun. They do get a little bit of afternoon shade, but are in sun for the most part. Okay, so I've got the bulbs planted, and I have these planted right up here. I just kind of marked it a little bit in the soil, but I did 2 daffodils on either side, and then in between each one I did the tulips. Luckily they were about the same planting depth, just a little bit higher on the tulips, believe it or not, at least on this variety. So I've got all that planted, and now I'm just going to fill in here with my violas and my pansies. Now, I have a video about violas and pansies and the differences between the two that I'll link at the end of this video if you guys would care to learn more. But I just wanted to show you guys here the violas, which have the smaller blooms. However, these are really blooming more profusely, at least right now, than the pansies that I have. But these are the violas. And then I have the pansies here in both this color, a darker purple, and then white as well. So I'm just going to kind of mix all those together in this bed and then cover it up with the mulch, and I should be done. It's just as easy as that. Here I'm just laying out my pansies and violas to get an idea of how I want them planted before digging, and I'm making sure to space out my different colors so they're all evenly distributed. I'm using more violas in this area than usual because they have so many blooms right now, but I'm still adding the pansies, which have the bigger blooms and are more eye-catching from far away. Both of these flowers prefer full sun to part sun, and as I mentioned earlier, this is more of a full sun area with just a bit of shade later in the day, so they do really well in this area. Both flowers also prefer well-draining soil, and I'm just mixing some slow-release fertilizer to the soil before adding it back in. Now, there are a lot of different colors to choose from with both violas and pansies, and I personally tend to stay in the purple family because I feel like that looks really nice through winter and with my holiday decorations, and then in spring as everything around these flowers starts to wake up and bloom. Now, as I'm planting, I'm just making sure to leave a bit of space between the plants so they have good airflow and can fill in, and also making sure not to plant them right by the line where the grass starts so they don't get in the way of the edger when the grass is cut. As I mentioned, I'm getting these in the ground before we have any hard freeze in my area, so they have a little bit of time to establish themselves. Now, one thing that I'm a little concerned about this year is deer eating these plants. I've planted pansies in this area in fall for years, but have had a big problem with deer this year. So I'm a little worried that they may come through and wipe out my plants. So we'll just have to see what happens with that. They tend to generally not come so close to the front of the house, but you never know. So I'm hoping that they continue to avoid this area. All right, you guys, so I've got my small bed planted here by my front walkway, and you can see I've got the pansies and violas planted and just kind of interspersed together. Now these will fill in as the season goes on, and then of course once spring comes, these will fill in very, very nicely. Beyond that, I have the daffodils and tulips planting, which will come up in yellow, white, and purple. And then beyond that, you guys can see here, there's one little bloom there off to the right. That's my dwarf butterfly bush that also blooms in purple. So we've got the higher plant there, then we're going to have our bulbs come in, and then the lower growing pansies and violas here up front. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm so excited that I got that front walkway done and added the tulips, which I'm really excited about because this is the first time that I've planted them in ground. So I can't wait to see those come up in the spring. Now, if you guys enjoyed this week's video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you can be notified each time I upload a new video. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me again. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And until next time, happy gardening and goodbye.